Recently, Bernina USA did a wonderful webinar on Art Canvas for the version 8.1 of the Bernina Designer Plus software. I missed the webinar because I'm in Australia and our time zones are a bit different and I just couldn't organise it. But they did provide a wonderful ebook which is available to download still, even if you missed the webinar. And you can get that from their website. So if I just bring that up now, if you go to the Bernina US site and go to Experience, Embroidery, and then if you scroll down, you should be able to go to the Embroidery ebooks. There they are. So click on that. And then scroll down, you will find the Just Design It ebook Artwork Canvas. So that's well worth downloading. It goes through all the tools, explains what they are and what they do in Art Canvas. So it's a real basic starting place for you to get more out of your Art Canvas. It's more or less an introduction, but a very important one at that. Okay, so I'm just going to close that. Now, in the webinar and instructions, they used the Art Canvas area to design in, but we also have the opportunity to open Corel Draw as a standalone product. I'll just minimize the Bernina software for a moment, and when you installed your 8.1, you should have got these 4 icons from Corel. And the Corel Draw SE is the part that is embedded into the Bernina software, and you can open this as a standalone by double clicking on it here without opening your Bernina software. Now there are some advantages to that and I will go through those, but first I want to go back to the Bernina software, so I'll bring that up to be able to show you those. Now you can right click on the toolbar here and left click on the toolbox options, and it will bring in the Corel Draw SE interface with all its tools, and there are a few extra drawing tools available in the Corel program, and the icons are different, but there's a few other extra options which you can access from here, which is good because you can basically use it as the Corel Draw program. But I prefer, as I said, to open the Corel Draw as a standalone, and I'm going to demonstrate why. First of all, when you draw something, so I'm just going to remove this toolbox for the moment, so I'll uncheck it. So we're back to Art Canvas. So if you're in Art Canvas and you draw something with your pen tool or the freehand tool, and I'll just double click to finish that line, and you convert it to an embroidery. So if I click the convert, it will convert it immediately to an embroidery. In that process, however, it removes your drawing. So even if I show the vector here, it won't show up. Even if I move that embroidery, it's not underneath it anywhere. If I go back to Art Canvas, it won't be there either, because this is what is showing here is actually a picture of the embroidery, because I've got show embroidery highlighted here. If I click on that to hide the embroidery, there is no drawing there. In the conversion process, you lose your drawing. So if you've spent a lot of time designing something, you need to export that file of the drawing so that you can use it again later, or if you find you make a mistake a long way down the track, you can get back to it. The only options you have in the Bernina software is that you can save the file. So I'll just, what I'm going to do is undo. I can undo to get back to the drawing. So the undo process though will go through all the steps I just did one at a time. So I will go back to embroidery canvas, and then I have to undo that as well, and undo again because I moved it. And then finally I get back to my drawing here. And I know that's the drawing because I've got a curve here on layer 1 in my object manager. So I've got my object manager docker open here. If I was to save this, if I go File, Save As, I can only save it as an art file. I can save it as various versions of the art file, but I can't say, I can save it as an EMB file as well. But basically, it's an embroidery file. It's not a graphics file. So when I open it up again, I can edit the drawing, provided I haven't converted it to an embroidery. But if I convert it to an embroidery, the drawing's gone. So that's not necessarily the best option. If you are going to stay in Art Canvas, then you should export your drawing before you start your embroidery process, so that you've got a backup copy of just the drawing. Now when you go to File, Export, you'll get a different dialog, and you can export it as a lot of different formats. You can export it as a JPEG, you can export it as an Adobe Illustrator, you can export it as a bitmap. Obviously, if you export it as a bitmap or a JPEG, it won't be a vector drawing anymore, because those formats are raster formats. Adobe Illustrator is a vector format, and there are a few more vector formats in this list, but nowhere in this list is the .cdr extension, which is the Corel Draw native extension. So you can't export this and then expect it to be absolutely compatible with software when you reopen it. In theory, the vector formats like Adobe Illustrator, etc. should work fine, but I prefer to keep the native format if I can, and I can't do that from Art Canvas. So that's one reason why I prefer to work in Corel Draw as a standalone. Right, I'm going to cancel that. Reason number 2 is that even if you save this as an art file, if you haven't done any embroidery to it at all, and you just save it as an art file, you can in Art Canvas create layers, and sometimes I do that. For instance, this is on layer 1, but I can create another layer, and I can create another drawing on layer 2. Now the reason I would do that would be to be able to hide layer 1. Sometimes if you may bring a bitmap in, for instance, and you're drawing over the top of it, and after a while you want to hide the bitmap so that you can do some editing to the drawing. So to do that, you need to have 2 layers. So if I take my pen tool again now, and I draw another line, okay, that's my second line, but that was on layer 2 because I had that highlighted. And you can see here in my object manager, I've got one curve on layer 2 and another curve on layer 1. Now I can hide layer 1 by clicking on the little eye, and I can work on layer 2. So you may not see a use for this now, but further down the track you may. If I save this as an art file, because I'm not ready to do my embroidery yet, so I'll go Save As, and I'm going to call it Test Art there, and save over the top of that one. Do you want to replace it? Yes. Okay. And I go back to, I can't close this. I have to go to Embroidery Canvas to close the file. Do I want to save changes? I'll go yes. And now if I want to reopen that and work on it again, I'll go Open. I'll get that test file again. Oh. Okay, well my software crashed, so I had to reopen. If I open that file I just saved, the test file, and go to Art Canvas, my drawing will still be there, but look what's happened. Both my curves are on layer 1. It has compressed the drawing to one layer, and I might not have wanted that. That doesn't happen if you just use Corel Draw. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 1, I can't save in the Corel Draw format, and reason number 2 is it doesn't maintain the layers. And another reason I prefer to work in Corel Draw is that when you're working on your design, you may take a long time to perfect your drawing, especially when you're new to it and you're still learning the tools. I find it easier to have just the Corel Draw program open because it's not using as many resources on my computer. I haven't had to open the whole Bernina software as well, and therefore it's a smoother experience. These are very heavy utilizers of the resources of your computer, and if you've got a computer that's only just meeting the minimum standards, you may find that after a while it will crash if you're doing something quite complex.